Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us around the world. We would love to hear from you in the chat. So whatever platform you're on, let us know where you're joining from. That'd be really cool. And do know that, again, whatever platform you're on, we are absolutely wanting some engagement and some questions to come through today as we go through this fantastic new feature that's come into Octopus, which is policies. I'm super excited about this, and I know Ships is as well. So please do ask questions at any point in time, and we'll pick them up as we go through. And we do have a few minutes towards the end for picking up any other questions that we didn't address throughout as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Ships. Good morning, Ships. How are you going?
Morning, Matt. Well, thanks. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
All right. As mentioned, today we are chatting about policies within Octopus. But before we get into that, just a quick bit about ourselves. Hi everyone, I'm Ships, and I am a product manager here at Octopus. I've been here over 4 years, and I hail from Auckland, New Zealand. And Matt?
Yeah, so I'm on, as I say to Ships, I'm on the second best island across here in Tasmania. She's on the best one in New Zealand. And I'm a developer advocate here at Octopus Deploy. So I get to do all the cool stuff after Ships and the team have done all the hard work of actually making the product and getting it to a point where it works. I get to come out and talk about it and share it with the world and find out how our customers and the folks in the community can best use our product and the capabilities. So yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and Matt's quite a little bit newer to Octopus. He's been with us last year, but I've really enjoyed working with him so far. But let's get into it today. So today we're talking about, first we're going to talk about what policies are and why we even built it. And then, after that, we get through that quickly. We'll get through a bunch of live demos around how policies work. So we've got some exciting use cases to show you there. And we'll wrap up with a sneak peek of what's next. Also, we will be taking questions at the end. So as you listen to us and watch the demos, if you do have any questions for us about the policies feature, please do put it into your comment section. We'll see it towards the end and answer them one by one. So yeah, please do post your questions as we go. All right, so our vision with Platform Hub. So Platform Hub is a place for platform teams to scale delivery best practices within their organization. And policies is the newest feature we've built within Platform Hub. It enables platform teams to embed governance directly into their deployment pipelines. Since Octopus is kind of like the last checkpoint before you hit production, it's almost the best place to put these trusted controls and put these guardrails in place, so you're always compliant, and it's the obvious place to enforce any rules that your company or your organization or your industry needs. And so policies makes compliance really visible and automated, at the same time giving your developers some flexibility around their deployment process. Policies are evaluated in real time, so it's just if the engine goes and evaluates these policies just before your deployment is executed, and after the evaluation, it logs the results of those in the audit logs. So when that auditing time comes around, you're able to show the auditor proof and verification to meet your compliance checks. Now, we spoke to over 50 platform teams last year, and a bunch of use cases came up around policies, and here's like really the crux of why we built this feature. Some of the most popular ones that I'll share with you today is, firstly, a lot of platform teams wanted to enforce a mandatory approval step for every production deployment, and that could be via an ITSM type change request or change control type approval. The other one was all deployments must run a code analysis security scan of some sort. That was another one that was pretty common. And then the last one, which was also pretty popular, was that for your production deployments, the packages, images, and files used must come from a verified source. So these are some of the key use cases that we're trying to address with policies. Yeah.
That's really cool. And I remember back to my days of being like on the tools and being in a position of using different tools for whatever role I was in at that point in time. And what we found is that when products didn't have things like policies within the product itself, like as an organization, you still needed to adhere to those policies anyway, right? Like the organization or IT still expects that you're doing X, Y, and Z. And then it became really hard to lead people down the right path, first of all, and then also show that we are doing the right thing that we agreed to do. And that could be for anything. I've got stories about when we first went into a cloud environment at a company that I was working at, and people were just deploying to whatever region around the world that they, picked at that point in time. And that had, obvious implications around not only performance, but data sovereignty and all that sort of stuff as well. And what I found that I ended up doing, and I've seen a lot of other people do, is you get into this reactive checking state of having like scripts and automations that are now checking the product. Are people doing the right thing? And then you get an alert, and it's very reactive. You have to first find out that there's, moving away from what you're trying to enforce with your policy. Then you need to go and educate them and talk about them. So I really love policies because if nothing else, it just guides people down the correct path, almost by default. So
exactly, and that's exactly what we mean by putting in the right guardrails in place, so that your developers don't break any of those guardrails and have a lane in which they can play. And to your point of like enforcing it tediously, that's kind of exactly what we found, right? Like ultimately policies was very much manual, has in most places it's been manual, and a lot of the auditing stuff and the evidence gathering is also manual. So it's all in manual processes, which is prone to human error, and then goes into a spreadsheet. So we want to streamline all of that, at least with as much as we can with an Octopus, so platform teams don't have to really worry about that and spend too much time on it, really, and they can spend time on more useful stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Like improving their DevX. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. That sounds great. I think that we should jump straight into demos now. So do you want to show us what this looks like within Octopus?
Yeah, let's jump in. All right. So policies lives within Platform Hub. Platform Hub is a new area within Octopus that's, remember, sits across spaces. So you can enforce policies across all of your spaces within an instance. Now, when you jump into Platform Hub, there's policies on the left. You get to create a policy here. Create. And really the key parts of the policy is the scope and the conditions. The scope really defines to what parts of the deployment process this policy applies to. So it includes things like environments, tenants, projects, project groups. You can scope it down to as narrow as you like or as wide as you like, including spaces and a few other things. So that's where you define where this policy applies to what it applies to. And then the conditions is where you define what the actual policy checking is. So what condition are you looking to check that the deployment should meet before it's gone ahead and executed? Now, depending on whatever condition you've defined, there you can either block the deployment or send out a warning. And so what this means is in your early stages, especially when you're testing or introducing new policies, you might just want to warn your application team that, hey, your current deployments aren't meeting this particular policy, please fix them. But in the long term, you can actually ensure that you block, if the deployment doesn't meet the policy itself, it's blocked going into, say, production. So those are really the key parts of a policy. The other piece I'd like to call out is policies written in this language called Rego. For those of you who don't know, Rego is this the industry-wide accepted standard for writing policies. It's used by the Open Policy Agent and many other policy engines as well. So you'll find lots of examples on the internet of how to use Rego. But hold on, let me just show you something else. What we also have in Octopus is we have in our docs examples of all the types of scoping and conditions that you could do based on your use case. So we've actually tried to, define a bunch of boilerplate policy code in here that you can simply copy paste when you're trying to get started. The other piece I'd like to call out is the schema piece. So you can go ahead and have a look at our input schema. Like I mentioned, in our scope, you can actually scope it down to a variety of things. You can have a look at exactly what all of those Octopus resources are, like steps even, and a bunch of things. This is the output schema. So once the policy is evaluated, this is something like that is what you'd get.
Awesome. I love seeing all this because when I've written some policies myself, as I started getting into the product, I'd start, with a new policy, and then you sort of had blank page syndrome. So the examples page is like my go-to all the time for, how do I want to scope this down, or what conditions do I want? So the team have done a really awesome job there with that. So I'd also love to see what this actually looks like in action, both from a producer point of view, so someone who's creating a policy, and then someone who, like from the consumer point of view, someone who's running a deployment process that is then affected or impacted by that policy, and what that looks like.
Yeah, 100%. Let's jump into a working policy. All right, for this example today, let's imagine that your security team has come to you as a platform team and asked you to enforce that there's a new code analysis tool we're introducing, and that must be run for all deployments going forward. In this case, the security tool may have chosen something like SonarQube. So in here, in our Platform Hub section, I've gone ahead and defined a policy that checks for a particular step being present. I'll dive into that in a moment, but let's look at the scope of the policy first. So in terms of the scope, we have scoped it down to the space I'm in and a very particular project I want to start applying it to. And on the other hand, what I've done is I've defined a new step template that runs this sonar scanner from SonarQube. It's a traditional step template, and I've gone and grabbed its ID and put it into our conditions. So what this condition is checking is that, firstly, for all the steps in my process, the first one is of type step template, and then that first step also matches my brand new step template that I've created with the SonarQube one. So that's the ID there. So that's how I've gone ahead and defined the policy. At this point, I've set it up so that it's at warning. So we don't want to block deployment straight away. It's a new policy we're introducing. Let's set it up as warning. So then what I can do is go ahead and publish. Obviously, I've gone through a few iterations here already, so my versions are a bit screwed up here. But at the moment, I'm going to go publish a new version and make it active. So now that I've published it and made it active, it will now start applying to all of my projects. So remember, I'm only applying it to a particular project, which is actually this one. Simple process here, a simple two-step process. Let's go ahead and create a new release and deploy and see what happens. So I haven't restricted the policy to environments, so it will apply to all environments. So it should just apply here to deployment as well. And as you can see up here, the first thing it's done is gone ahead and applied policies. And here it says clearly that actually I did not comply with my new policy around enforcing the code analysis step. And in here in the bracket, I've gotten a helpful message that, hey, the sonar step is actually not mandatory. Please add it in. But as you can see, the deployment's still going to go ahead because it's in warning mode. What I can do as an application team is also go ahead and look at my verbose logs. And this tells me exactly what input was given into the policy engine. So I can go look at the schema that was given against which my deployment was evaluated, and then also see the results, the condition that was enforced, sorry. So yeah, that's how you would go ahead and enforce a brand new policy. What I would then do actually is once I actually properly want to enforce it, I would go ahead and block it. So let's commit and publish it as version 9. Oops, I think I didn't make it active. So here we go. Let's make it active as well. Sweet. So my new version now blocks. And if I go back to my project, go back to the release, new release. So it had gone ahead and deployed to development. Let's try and deploy it to staging. This should now block. There we go. The deployment didn't go ahead because I don't comply with the policy. To fix it, again, I can go ahead, add a step. Go to my new library step template to add the sonar scanner. And remember, I set it up so that the step had to be the first one. It can't be the later in the deployment, so I have to reorder that. Save that. So now my process should be compliant. We'll go create a new release, and the deployment should go ahead. There we go. No longer blocked. My deployment has gone ahead, and I am now compliant. So oh, sorry, just one more bit I'd like to show before I take a question there. So as a platform team, one of the cool things I can do is also see the audit records for all of these events. So I can go ahead in my audit log, and there are a bunch of new categories we've introduced around compliance, policy, evaluated, with all the different outcomes that you might get from the evaluation. I've selected all 3 right now, but in here, as you can see, it's logged through all of the 3 deployments that went ahead with whether they were blocked, warned, or went ahead. So that gets that gets logged as well. And this is your proof to show to your auditor that, hey, at that point in time, this deployment that went ahead was compliant or not.
Awesome, yeah. And if you have access to policies within the product as well, you can also stream those audit logs off to an external SIEM as well, right? So if you've got logging across all of your environment, which most enterprises do, they'll want to centralize that somewhere so we can send it off elsewhere, and then you can run your own queries or reports, in whatever SIEM tooling that you have as well. So one of the things, well, actually there were 2 things that came up there which I thought were really cool. The first one is that as the platform team, you can really control that message that gets out to the application teams and the consumers about why the policy didn't work, right? So I think that's a key thing to remember, is as you're developing these, in that description, here, for the violation reason, if you can be as detailed as possible, you will help the users understand why they might not be compliant with the policy. And that could even be linking out to some external, or internal documentation, rather, in something like Confluence that you might have written about the policy and how to become compliant with it if it's not super clear. But yeah, that use case of making sure that a step exists not only in the process, but in a particular part of the process, like at the start, like this must be the first step. That's come up so often. So yeah, it was one of the key use cases that you said, and yeah, I hear it all the time from customers and out just in the community as well, about making sure that we're running the right steps and people aren't skipping them or disabling them on their way through. So yeah. Now,
yeah, it's funny you bring that up. So if we go to our examples, we've here's an example of how to check that. So here's the one I showed you. So the step actually exists at the beginning or at the end of your deployment execution. And then here's the bit that the code for whether the step has been skipped or disabled, and you can fail it if it does as well. So you can block the deployment if that's happened. So yeah, so we have all of the common use cases well documented here. So please make use of this when writing your policies.
Yeah, nice. Love it. Now, what if as an organization, so we've set up the security scanning there using a particular tool, and tools come and go in organizations, and what if I now needed to change the tool that we're using for our security scanning? That can be quite disruptive if I have to go and change that across all of my deployment processes, especially I'm probably not going to get it done at the same time, right? So is there a way that policies can help with that?
Yeah, 100%. So in this example, we're going to walk through how to change and update an existing policy. Our use case is that we have a security scanning tool that we have made mandatory for our application teams, currently using Sonar, but the security teams come and said, actually, we're going to move to Sneak. So as a platform team, I've gone ahead and created this new step template that goes and triggers the code analysis for Sneak. Now let's look at the policy side of things and how we might update that. So all policies in Octopus are backed by Git. They're stored in your version control, in your repo, and therefore you can update them. You can create new branches and update and test them before you publish them out. In this case, this currently is checking for the Sonar Cube step. And I'm just going to make a change to the ID here so that instead of the Sonar Cube, it's checking for the Sneak step template existing at the beginning of my deployment processes. I can then go ahead and commit the change. Since it is a new breaking change, I will submit it as that as well. So I've committed that only. So you can keep iterating by committing, and then when you're ready, publish it out as a major change for your application teams. I'll make this version active. Now, one thing I want to call out is I'm just making an update to an existing policy here. What you can also do is for a period of time have both policies playing up as well and running. So that's another possible way to migrate from an older policy to a newer one, where the new one might be in warning state, older one might be in a block state, and so on. So in this case, for this policy, though, I've updated an existing one, and currently it will block the deployment from happening if the Sneak step is not present. So let's jump into the actual project. Here is my project against which the policy applies, and today it's running the Sonar scanner step. So as soon as I activate it, this starts to apply. So even for existing releases, if I try to deploy them, it should block already. And it does. It's blocked. I haven't updated the description details here, but it is blocking because the Sneak step isn't present. Instead, the Sonar scanner was present. So what I can do now is go ahead and change that step. So I'm going to delete the Sonar scanner step here and instead add a new step template, which is my Sneak step. And remember, it needs to be And sorry, the way I set up the policy, it needs to be at the top of the deployment process before the deployment's actually executed. So I'll move that to the top and save. Oops. Save. And that should now go ahead. So I need to create a new release since the process has changed. And this should now go through. There we go. I am now compliant because I've included the sneak step instead. So that's an example of how you might go ahead and update your policies to use a new tool or comply with a newer standard or a change in standard. And you can iterate these policies over time. And it evolves with your organizational thoughts and internal processes as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's I'd like the idea of the multiple policies as well. So yeah, if you don't want to make that immediate, because as soon as you activated that, it was an immediate change in the policy engine, right? So as soon as another deployment happens after you've hit that activate button, that policy is in effect, right? So
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I like the idea of multiple policies. If you're looking at something that you need to change gradually over time, you can introduce the second one slowly, like you said, with a warning, and then sort of wean out the old one once most of or all of the processes have moved across. So, yeah.
Exactly. All right. So we've been walking through a bunch of different use cases for policies. One of the most common ones that I see coming through, that came through from platform teams, was trying to enforce some sort of a pre-deployment check or a post-deployment check. So it's usually the pre-flight, steps that must be there before your deployment starts, and some post-deployment. And all of these are standardized and shared across the whole org. I wonder, Matt, if you could walk us through how a platform team might do that with policies today.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can get my screen up here on the stage. Fantastic. So what I've got here is actually a process template. And I know today we're not specifically talking about process templates, but process templates are another feature within Platform Hub for platform engineers to help with those building blocks of how you want your consumers and your application teams to run deployments in your organization. So I've built one here that is for those pre-flight deployment steps. And I won't get too deep into each of these steps. That's not really super important for today. But in my organization, I might have defined that we need to run a scan against an SBOM or a software bill of materials as it's come through from the build server to make sure at deployment time that we aren't open to any vulnerabilities that might have come between the build and the release time. And I might also be doing things like configuration validation to make sure all of the config for my app is there and present as things like variables for the application to run. And I might also send a Slack message out. So in this fictitious scenario, these are my pre-flight deployment checks. And I want to make sure that everyone can consume these really easily. So they can, as a process template, they can easily consume that in their own process deployment process, which I'll show you in a moment. But then I want to make sure that it is actually being used and it's running on every deployment as well. So for that, if we go across, and I've got a project here that is ready to go for process template verification. And in here, if we have a look at the process itself, we can see that I've pulled that in to my deployment process. So I've pulled in that process template. We're running those pre-flight checks, and then I'm going and doing my deployment with whatever customized steps that I might have as that specific application team. So at the moment, I'm adhering to that. Now, if I jump back into Platform Hub and take a look at policies, what I've also gone and written as a platform team is to make sure that that process template is executed. So this policy is making sure that that does actually run. So the action that I've got here is to block the violation that's a violation action, sorry. And for the scope in this one, I'll just make this full screen. But I'm scoping this to a specific project here on line 6 in a specific space on line 7. This is a good way to scope things down to be very specific, maybe when you're going through testing or initial creation of the policy. But you can absolutely say remove these two things if you want it to evaluate, or set the default evaluate to true if you wanted to evaluate it across all of your deployment processes and runbooks in your organization. Now, the second part that I've got here is the condition itself. And if we have a look at this, this is a little more complex, but again, we've got these in the examples in our documentation as well. And this policy is ensuring that all of the enabled steps that come from a specific process template, so I'm calling that out down here by the slug or ID of the process template itself, and I'm saying that it needs to be a type of process template. We are making sure that all of those are enabled, and also that they're not being skipped at deployment time by the person who's running the deployment itself. So that's what the policy looks like. So if I come back over as the persona of the application team who's running this, if I go and run, let's just create a new release for this one. I think that should be fine. And I'm going to deploy that out to the development environment. You'll notice I didn't scope this down to any specific environment. So this should evaluate across all of my environments. And we can see there the first one that gets run is the policy check. And I can see that I'm compliant with the process template is being executed policy. If I wanted to, I can go and change the log level here to verbose. And this will show me the entire payload that was sent into that policy engine. So I can see all of the properties that were sent through and what those values were and what I'm being evaluated on. But that all looks good. But what I might do now is I'm going to come back to the process itself, and I'm going to try and do something naughty here. And maybe I'm trying to get around something that my platform team has put in place. So I'm going to try and disable this, because I just want to quickly, deploy my Kubernetes manifest and see if that's working. So I'm going to be a bit naughty and just turn all of that off. Now I'm going to create a new release here because I have changed the deployment process, and I'm going to deploy that out to the development environment again. And immediately we can see that it's gone through that policy engine, and now that we are not compliant with the policy. So if I look at the task log, I'll get that violation message that my platform team has put in. So it's saying that the pre-deployment check process template must be used. So that's where it's gone ahead and determined, or it's found that the user has disabled those or tried to skip them, and we've said, no, they must be used. Notice that I didn't say where in the deployment process that it must be used. I just said it must be in there somewhere. So that's one way to try and enforce, or to actually enforce some of the templates that we've got that we've agreed to as an organization. And one other cool thing that you can do, if I go back to Platform Hub quickly and look at the process template. So because this is all backed by Git and it's all version controlled, when I create a process template, I create a version of it as well. So you can see here I've got version 1.0.0 and 1.1.0 as well. Now I might iterate on this process template over time and make changes and modifications. And I might then want the teams in the organization to be using a specific version exactly, or greater than a specific version. I might have brought in some important changes to the way that we're running that specific process template. So within the policy itself, I won't actually go and run this again, but if we have a look at the policy that I'd written and we bring that up in full screen, what I could do, for example, is for every step in the process template, one of the properties that we have that gets passed into the engine with that payload is the version of the template that's coming through. So this is doing a semantic version comparison for against the version that's coming in at runtime of the process template. And over here, I could say what that version is. So I could be very specific and say everyone in my organization must be running 1.1.0, for example. And we've got lots of different examples on what that could be. It could be you need to be running a version higher than this, or this exact version, for example. So that's really cool. And the last thing that I'll show as well, just quickly, is over in the configuration, I can leave that. We've got our audit log here. So we do have advanced filters, and the easiest way to filter the audit logs on these is to have a look at the categories. So if I just search here for compliance, we've got a few categories that are whether the compliance policy evaluated as compliant. So we could see all of those deployments that were compliant. We can see the ones that have a blocked outcome and ones that have a warning outcome. So if I filter that to a blocked outcome, we'll see the one that I ran here just a few minutes ago about the process template needing to be used in the environment. So that's how policies can work together with process templates to help enforce some of those things as platform teams and organizations that we want to make sure are being used across our organization.
That's awesome, Matt. I really like how the features within the Platform Hub kind of build on each other and work on each other. I'm sure someone thought about this quite carefully when building this.
I'm sure they did, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't. Oh man, I used to work at this bank before, and we used to have these sort of deployment checks we had to go through for every deployment. And it was very much like open the spreadsheet, check that you've gone through some of these steps, and log that you have gone through it with your release version and who did it and all of that. So that just gets rid of all of that manual stuff and puts it directly in your pipelines, which is so cool. One of the things I was wondering though is we didn't have to do it for every deployment. So like for development and test, we didn't have to do it. It was only mandatory for staging, UAT, or production type environments. So can we do that with these sorts of policies?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we jump back to the screen here, if I go back into Platform Hub and I'll go into the policy, so that is something that you'd be able to achieve through scoping. So if we have a look at the scope that's defined here, I'll make this full screen. So at the moment, we're only asking to evaluate the policy if it's on a specific project and in a specific space. But something else that we'd be able to do is one of the inputs that come in is the environment that we're deploying to. And we can then take a look at the slug as well. So the way that you could achieve this is to have something like this with some comma separated values of your environments. So I could say, for example, I just want this to evaluate in test and maybe production as well. So for that development environment, this now would not evaluate. And actually, let's quickly make sure that this is that I'm telling the truth here. So let's go through the process of testing this out. Oops, and I only did a commit there. I haven't flowed the full work through. Let's go with that being a minor change. And I'm going to go ahead and activate that immediately too. So if I jump back over into the project, and I guess we can do a redeployment, right, of an existing one?
Yep, it's...
Because this happened, that's another important thing, I suppose, is that the policy check is happening at deployment time right now, isn't it? It's on every deployment that runs.
That's right. So that dev deployment that failed, that should now go through, I imagine.
Yeah. So let's do a redeployment here to dev of the one that did fail. And there we go. Because the development environment wasn't scoped in the policy, it has now gone through, and we don't see that it's evaluated against a policy because it wasn't scoped to evaluate against a policy. So it's just gone ahead and completed the deployment. So you can be very granular with the way that you scope the policies. And that's really helpful both for introducing policies when you're sort of getting started with this. You can scope it very specifically and do testing with individual projects or teams, or as we see, environments within that. And then when you get more confident, you can tweak that. So it's very flexible based on what your requirements are.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for showing us that, Matt. That's great. Okay, another popular use case that we heard last year was around ensuring that your container images, files, and packages being used in the deployment process. is actually coming from the right branch or source. So, commonly within large enterprise orgs, you'd have the master branch, which is locked down, and that should be the source for all production deployments. So that came up quite often as feedback when I was listening to customers last year. So can we dive into an example around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I show the project or the process template here, what I first want to show is that in this Octopus deploy instance, if I come down, I'm using the Octopus package feed at the moment, so the internal one that we've got built into the product. But I do want to call out that we will soon have the ability to use policies against external feeds as well. So if you're sending your container images or packages into an external feed like Artifactory or Docker Hub or Azure Container Registry, or basically insert package feed here, we will be able to scope policies based on different parameters coming from that feed as well. So it's not just the built-in package feed that you need to use. This is just the one that I'm using for this specific example. So here I've got a package that's for my application. I can see I've shipped through a bunch of different versions of this. But the cool thing is that these are being built by GitHub. And I'm also sending through some build information as well. So if I take a look at the versions that I've got here, I can actually see over here under branch, which branch that this has been built from. So we'll notice that 1.0.12 was built from the main branch, but 1.0.13 came from a feature branch. And I'm very creative with my naming there. As you can see, it was called new feature. So what this means is that I can use these properties in a policy as well. So if I jump back over to Platform Hub first and take a look at the policy that I've built, we are making sure, so this one's called verify package source. Now in here, the violation action that I've got is to block, and the scope that I've got is we are looking at a few different things here. So we're looking at a specific project again. We are looking at a specific space within Octopus Deploy. And then I'm scoping it down to environments. So I don't mind too much what people deploy to our development environment. I'm happy if they deploy packages that came from a feature or a test branch. And we've also got some functionality in Octopus Deploy for ephemeral environments as well. The idea of those is being a throwaway environment that you can test your incoming changes from. And they usually come from a pull request. So that package is actually not being built by the main branch ever. So I want to scope those out of this policy because I'm okay with those happening. The last scope that I've got there on line 9 is that policies apply to both deployments and runbooks in Octopus Deploy. So I want to scope out runbooks. I want this to only apply for deployments that I've got. The second thing, if we look at, is over under the conditions. I'll make this one full screen. So this is having a look at the packages. So by default, I will allow this to deploy, but then I'm looking at all of the packages. And what this is saying is if there are some packages in the deployment, I want to check the Git reference that's coming through. And again, we've got lots of different examples on how you can match this string. It could be a regex, you could use wildcards, different patterns in there. But I'm just saying that I want to make sure that if packages are being used in the deployment, that they are coming from the main branch. So let's go and see this one in action. If I go over to the project that I've got here for package verification, and let's go and create a new release for this one, because it's in the release where you define what package that you want to use in that deployment. So if we remember, 1.0.13 was the version of the package that came from my feature branch. That one did not come from the main branch. So I'm going to use that one here. Let's save that. And then I'm going to do a deployment out to the development environment. Now, this deployment should succeed. And there we go. So the policy hasn't been applied here because I didn't scope the development environment. So I'm allowing folks in the organization to go and deploy whatever packages, pre-release packages that they like into that development environment. And that deployment's gone through and succeeded. But now if I try and move that into the staging environment, I'll go ahead and start the deployment. What we'll see immediately is that that one has failed, because if we look at the task log, it's saying that I don't comply with that policy, which is to verify the package source, and that the packages used in this deployment must be built by the main branch. So that's where that scoping's come into effect, because I've now tried to move this into the staging environment, but the package that I was using didn't come from the main branch. So our policy is blocking that deployment. Now, the other thing that I will show here, just to finish off again, is down under the configuration. All of this comes into our audit log in Octopus Deploy. And if you're using policies, you can stream this out to an external SIEM as well. And we can filter this based on categories. Sorry, just needed a drink there. As I start to look for, search for compliance, we've got three different categories within the audit logs today that we can filter on. So if I was to look at the ones that were blocked, we'll see that one here is in the audit log. It's told me when it was blocked, at what time, and we've got all the information that we'd need there to show both deployments that have adhered to policies and been successful, and the ones that have either been blocked or warned as well. That's all stored in our audit log here in Octopus Deploy.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I can see that being really useful. Yeah, for sure. And one of our viewers have said that this is super helpful and important to their organization, which is fantastic.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Yeah, so I guess we've gone through a lot of our examples for today. And if we can, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So what I wanted to walk us through was what's up next. But before I dive into that, just to reiterate, the policies feature is now available for all our enterprise customers on both cloud and self-hosted versions. Let's walk through what's coming up next. So next up in Platform Hub, we're working on a feature called Project Templates. Project Templates helps to standardize your project setup and bring consistency to projects from day one. It helps the platform teams define those golden paths for the common deployment patterns across the organization, and it will be able to be versioned and updated similar to our process templates feature. So that's a big one that's coming up soon. And the next, in addition to that, we'll be working on a bunch of improvements to our existing features within Platform Hub, both process templates and policies. We'll be adding a way for platform teams to provide sensitive values as part of process templates. And the policy stuff that you saw today, to get started today, you're needing to copy paste code, but actually in the future, you'll be able to get started with boilerplate policies within the product directly. So that's the second piece. And the last piece, making use of the GitHub app connection within Platform Hub to go connect to your Git repo. So these are all the things that are coming up over the next few months within Platform Hub.
As silly as it might sound, I'm actually super excited for the example policies sort of being built into the product. Like you can, as soon as you hit like new policy, we'll have those examples kind of in the product, right? And I can just start from one of those. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. It gets rid of that blank page problem, right? How do I start with something? So that's and brings best practices of what we think into the product, like of useful policies from our perspective as well, right in the box. Anyway, I hope y'all get to use these features, and as you use them, as you have feedback, please jump into our roadmap to share the feedback, but also, a lot of the upcoming features and improvements and everything we're working on has been shared publicly in the roadmap. So please go to roadmap.octopus.com to follow along and share your feedback. That's awesome. It from us today.
And one thing I can vouch for absolutely with 100% confidence is that Ships is reading like every piece of feedback that comes through. So as is the team that's behind Ships building these features and functionality. So if you do use it and have questions or just general feedback, do send it through, because the team are listening, and I see it all the time. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
I don't
we have
think that
any
we've
questions?
seen any questions come through. I'm just scanning through the chat now as well. But that either means that everyone is on board and understands exactly what we're saying and how to go and use these things. So we should start to hear from some people soon, hopefully, off the back of this.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks for your time today, Ships. And yeah, thanks for everyone who's tuned in. We hope that you've found this super valuable. It will be up on our different channels, especially YouTube, for viewing at a later time if you wanted to come back and rewatch anything that we've gone through here. But for now, thank you very much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.